The second rhetorical analysis essay you guys wrote was by Cesar Chavez. So I want to take a moment to walk you guys through some of the things that I noticed while I was reading and analyzing the same way that you should have this passage. So the first thing I did was read the context 2 times, minimum. I noticed that it said on the 10th anniversary of the assassination of MLK. MLK, even if you don't know the date he was assassinated, MLK and the civil rights movement was prevalent in the 1960s. So the 10th anniversary of the assassination was actually 1978. So if you had that background knowledge, that was probably helpful. It said that Cesar Chavez was a labor union organizer and civil rights leader, and that he published an article in a magazine of a religious organization whose goal was to help those in need. Some of you wrote a rhetorical analysis essay for me about a letter, about a speech. You clearly did not read the context, and I don't know how I can help you if you don't read what's on the prompt. So we know that Chavez was our speaker, and that the format, the medium of this particular text is that it's an article in a religious magazine. Then it says, analyze the choices he makes to develop his argument about nonviolent resistance. This kind of prompt doesn't give us anything. You have to read the text and figure out what it's talking about. So I'm going to point out to you a couple of things that I observed. I wish I could show you the paper I'm looking at right now. I marked this thing up like crazy. I will take a picture of it and post it in case you're interested. I marked this text up a lot. And I went paragraph by paragraph, and I actually, literally in the margins, wrote what was going on in each paragraph for myself. But I do want to point out that this first paragraph is all about referencing Dr. King. Remember, this is on the 10th anniversary of MLK's death, so it makes sense to start with talking about MLK. The second paragraph is all about religion. Why would that be significant? Well, this is a religious magazine. Okay, so you need to be putting those pieces together when you're reading. He then starts to talk about if we use violence, then here are the things that are going to happen. The first clue for audience is right here on line 21. There will be a total demoralization of the workers. That's the first clue in this text about who his targeted audience is. He then discusses the benefits of nonviolence. Moving on to line 33 in this paragraph, then Chavez kind of starts talking about like what nonviolence really is, because there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding it. This paragraph that starts on line 45 is the biggest clue of all for audience. He says, we advocate militant nonviolence as our means of achieving justice for our people, but we are not blind to the feelings of frustration, impatience, and anger, which seethe inside of every farm worker. The burdens of generations of poverty and powerlessness lay heavy in the fields of America. If we fail, there are those who will see violence as the shortcut to change. Clues: every farm worker. Clue: generations of poverty and powerlessness. Another clue: fields. Okay, so moving on, he starts to give, around line 58, he starts to talk about marches, strikes, boycotts. All of these are options, solutions, I guess, for nonviolence. He references Gandhi, that Gandhi was an example of someone who practiced these nonviolent solutions. Then in this next paragraph, we have another clue for the audience. It says in line 66, if we beat the growers at the expense of the violent. So there's another clue about our audience. Moving on around line 78, then he starts examine history. He's saying essentially, look at the past. Like as we move forward with this problem of abuse, I suppose, we should use nonviolence because look at the past. Who gets killed when there's violence? The poor, the workers. That's another clue for audience. Ding, ding, ding. We believe it is too big of a price to pay for not getting anything. And so then he ends his article in this religious magazine by saying, we know that we most likely are not going to do anything for the rest of our lives except build our union. There's nowhere else to go in life. Who gets stuck down at the bottom and can't ever get out of it? Those who live in poverty. The last sentence is another clue for audience. We learned many years ago that the rich have money, but the poor have time. So if you couldn't quite figure out who the audience was on this text, then you need some practice. If you end up getting a rhetorical text like this on the exam in a month, that's not a speech, that's not a letter, that doesn't say the audience in the context, it's your job as a rhetorical analyst to figure it out. The very first time I read this text a couple years ago, I had to read it a few times, which is why in class today I told you guys that you needed to read the context and the text several times. It's not something that you can understand from one reading for most of us. Read it carefully. I warned you. So those of you who chose not to listen to my warning, I don't know what to say. The audience that Cesar Chavez is targeting the poor farm workers, those living in poverty who are farmers. That's his targeted audience. There's a lot of audiences here because this article was published in a magazine. So obviously, anyone who reads the magazine will be his audience. But just like with speeches that we've been working at for 7 months now, everyone in the room is the audience for a speech, obviously. In a TED Talk, everyone sitting in the room is the audience. But when we're analyzing audience for rhetorical analysis for AP Lang, we're looking at targeted audience. Who specifically is Chavez hoping will read and understand his message? And the answer is kind of given in clues throughout the entire piece. He is hoping that the people who read and hear him via this article are the poor farm workers who are struggling, who want to be violent to cause change. But he's telling them, if we practice nonviolence, that would be preferred. He gives reasons for that throughout his article. So as I was skimming through the essays that you all wrote, I observed a lot of problems with the rhetorical situation. Unfortunately, when you look at the rubric and you just, think not academically, if you don't understand the rhetorical situation, if you don't understand who is talking and who he's specifically talking to, then the whole thing kind of snowballs in a unfortunate negative way. So think about this as you make your decision this evening for which essay you would like graded. And perhaps reach out to me if you need some additional practice with audience. The clock is ticking and I will keep giving you guys lots of practice. We'll keep doing practice in class, obviously, and I'll keep posting additional practice on Teams, but take the initiative if you need some extra help with this. If you're just not getting it, ask for help and I can help you. Okay, so please make an informed decision. When you decide which essay you want graded, please submit it to this assignment, and that's what I will grade. Thanks.